Hello and welcome back. Previously, I've tried to show enough of the inner workings of the system to persuade you that producing for profit must lead to the crises engulfing the planet. It's not an accident, nor is it an unlikely set of coincidences. In this final session, we'll explore some of the useful features that we can take forward and use as the basis of a society in which we democratically decide what and how we can produce to satisfy the needs of us all. We'll need to do it in a way which repairs the damage done by extracting profit and ensures the future of life on planet Earth. It's a double paradox that whilst capitalism is an economic system that relies on the destruction of nature for its own development, proposing ways that purport to make it less destructive has become a major industry. There are powerful forces constantly at work, defending and advancing the interests of the hyper-rich and their system. The Koch family, the Cato Institute, the Institute of Economic Affairs head up a lengthening list of neoliberal think tanks, propagandists, lobbyists and others, who together with the Pope are amongst those who constitute a conspiratorial array of influencers, defenders and promoters of the capitalist way. There are more than 500 such organisations gathered together under the global umbrella of the Atlas Network, which spends billions unleashing individual ingenuity to enrich humanity. Without them, those who benefit from the system would have faded into history a long time ago. And let's not forget the many university courses dedicated to closing minds to anything but the capitalist form of economy, especially its most recent neoliberal form. Nevertheless, the majority of young people are rejecting capitalism as a way of life. According to a report published in July 2021 by the right-wing think tank, the Institute of Economic Affairs, nearly 80% blame capitalism for the housing crisis, while 70% of younger Britons believe the climate emergency is specifically a capitalist problem, and 72% back sweeping nationalisation. All in all, 67% want to live under a socialist economic system. A similar trend has been reported in the USA. Clearly, the ideology that has sustained capitalism is losing its grip, and not a moment too soon. But they haven't given up, not by a long way. They are constantly coming up with new ideas to present the system in a favourable light. So, despite all the seemingly good intentions at 26 COPs and this new agreement to start talking about plastic, it's all just blah, blah, blah. Professor of Sociology Alice Marr neatly sums up the problem. She sees the circular economy being captured and used as a way of future-proofing capitalism. Alice writes that the circular economy seems to offer radical changes to models of industrial capitalism, but it does not actually give up on unsustainable growth. We need to tackle the plastics crisis at its root, she says, dramatically reducing the global production of toxic and wasteful plastics. Since the radical challenges we need are actually unachievable within the constraints of the current system, let's not waste any more time on oxymorons like responsible, inclusive, or ethical capitalism. There really are no solutions that can offer a sustainable, equitable life within the constraints of the social, economic and political system that predominates throughout the world. Instead, let's explore some of the present-day features that can be taken forward and form the basis of a society in which we democratically decide what and how we produce to satisfy the needs of us all. In attempting to overcome the contradictions of a society driven by the sole motive of profit, capitalism has developed much that will be valuable in a new kind of society. But the constraints of the system have prevented the full development of science, technology, management techniques, and more. So here are a few examples of what we could take forward from what's been achieved despite the constraints of the capitalist framework. No doubt you can think of many others. Building on decades of mostly state-funded research, the revolution in science, not least in genomics, enabled a swift response to the coronavirus pandemic and has radically transformed treatment of diabetes, cancer, sickle cell disease, amongst many other advances. But as we have seen with the corporate constraints on the production of vaccine, the distorting effects of the demands of shareholder profits means that the full benefits are denied to many. Then there's the rapid advance of the digital revolution that has encircled the world in a cocoon of communication, enabling a global marketplace that, once released from the straitjacket of the private ownership by a small group of competing social media giants, is capable of instantly sharing all knowledge worldwide. Mechanization, coding, robotics, and, as it develops, artificial intelligence eliminate the need for most manual and increasing components of mental labor. But capital's insatiable demand for labor as the source of surplus value inhibits the full benefits of the technological revolution. It de-skills many, but simultaneously creates the need for teams of well-educated, highly skilled, flexible workers. In a post-capitalist society of planned production responding to need instead of market competition, the lives of workers will be transformed from disposable units of alienated human labor to co-owners of the products of their labor in control of the way they are produced and distributed. Transnational corporations are global forms of organization made possible by scientific approaches to management. They develop and use techniques which will prove invaluable in the unfolding social revolution. Freed from top-down pyramids of capitalist exploitation and control, emerging social systems will be dynamic, fluid, interdependent networks of autonomous, self-organizing, self-managing units. They will be linked together by the global web of connectedness into a new, continuously evolving whole, sharing a collective vision that eliminates inequality and contributes to the well-being of all. So, let's compost capitalism. After all, composting means rescuing, retooling, repurposing, or upcycling what's valuable and discarding what isn't. We'll need to do it in the context of creating a new society of the commons, bent on the aim of providing for all, but in a way which repairs the damage done by extracting profit and ensures the future of humanity on planet Earth. These are some of the revolutionary foundations that we can and must use to break the rule of capital. They will open the floodgates of human creativity and ingenuity. Just imagine that you are a member of a global society of communities. The era of global capitalist corporations organizing the world's production to maximize profit has been replaced by a system of collectively owned, democratically controlled cooperatives. As citizens, we work together, cooperating on the land and in the buildings we own to meet our needs for food, clothing, housing, education, health, and transport. You haven't got a job. No one has a job. There's no employer nor any employment contract. Your work is a contribution to satisfying the needs of the community. The work you do entitles you to a share of our community's collective product. Now, the global network of communities you belong to can ensure that the decisions we take are consistent with the continuation of life on the planet. None of the value you produce is siphoned off for distribution as profits to external shareholders. You aren't trapped by offers of unlimited credit. You're no longer drowning in debt. Any surplus revenue from sales is saved for the future or used to target priority needs agreed by the community. You contribute what you can and receive what your household needs. Growth now means increasing local production, with communities reducing their dependence on goods transported around the world, but exchanging fairly those things that cannot be made locally. Low energy, zero carbon public transport systems fueled from renewable sources carry people and goods from place to place. The issue of money for exchange and credit for investment is controlled by democratically accountable, not-for-profit service organisations. Communities meet regularly to review their needs and plan what they collectively will do to improve lives and the lives of people in other communities around the world. Because you take part in the decisions which are made, you feel and are in control. Your community sends its delegates to regional, national and global assemblies, taking part in decision-making at every level. Is this too utopian? Not really. Much of it exists already. We need to work out how to scale it up while dismantling the social relations of the old, destructive mode of capitalist production. Millions of people already live at least part of their lives on non-capitalist, not-for-profit principles. Many of us use and work in public sector services, others in workers' and farmers' cooperatives. 10% of the world's employed population work in cooperatives, but many cooperatives try to compete within the capitalist framework, or at best coexist within it. Instead, let us build a movement to go beyond capitalism with a society working along these lines. We could call it a cooperative transition. As well as the many organisations formally constituted as cooperatives, there are many grassroots enterprises, communities, groups, campaigns and movements pursuing principles that can help take us beyond the capitalist stranglehold. Like the cooperative movement itself, many have arisen as people struggle to deal with the consequences of capitalist depredation. Community groups of many kinds struggle against poverty, alienation and racism. Indigenous peoples fight to preserve their historical continuity against corporate extractivism, whilst environmental movements struggle to defend the ecosystems we need to live. Transition itself is a movement of communities coming together to reimagine and rebuild our world. Though many try to avoid any mention of capitalism, maybe hoping that it'll fade away as their initiatives blossom, their aspirations are to be welcomed and encouraged. We need to work together, forging a movement of movements, developing the constitution for a new way of living on the earth. There's more about this in the parallel course, Unmasking the State. So, in ending the selfish and destructive pursuit of profit, let's work with others in a global network of revolutionary organisations to restore the health of the planet's ecosystem. A not-for-profit system of production, distribution and exchange would optimise local production for local needs. Together, we will release the revolutionary potential of science, technology and technique to minimise resource use, creating a society based on cooperation, satisfying the needs of all. By replacing the employment contract with cooperative membership, we will overcome alienation of people from their work, from what is produced, and from society as a whole. Extending these relationships and principles throughout society will allow and enable people to fulfill their potential and their aspirations, making health and well-being the single defining social objective for the world's population. So here are some more proposals to consider. Revolutionary governments could agree to dismantle and replace the undemocratic top-down pyramid of organisations of free market capitalist rule, from the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the World Trade Organization at the top, to lobbyists, credit rating agencies, fund managers and bottom-feeding loan sharks. New and democratized institutions would take measures to ensure that incomes and the standard of living are progressively equalized around the world. A democratic world body, perhaps a global assembly, not controlled by the interests of big powers and without the massive bureaucracy that goes with it, would debate what local institutions and laws are wanted. The World Health Organization and organizations of scientists, like those in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, would make sure knowledge is shared and offer help and aid. All productive resources would be owned in common, replacing unlimited exploitation and depletion with stewardship of the land, the sea, the air, and all of the planet's ecosystems. The national and global networks carrying energy, data, people, and goods will be retooled and operated as not-for-profit, zero-carbon utilities. In a new society of the commons, ownership of the productive facilities of the major corporations will shift from external shareholders to a variety of forms of co-ownership under democratic control, operating forms of self-management. Property rights in seeds, pharmaceuticals, genes, intellectual products, and even water by global corporations would cease. Knowledge will be free and open. Providing assistance, sharing expertise and technology will become the new norm. Decisions about the extraction and use of natural resources and the optimum location of facilities for the production and distribution of goods should no longer be determined by the demands of shareholders and the market in cheap labour. Instead, the guiding principle should be the equitable satisfaction of needs in line with the restoration and enrichment of the planet's ecosystems. Turning to money, credit and debt, let's outlaw gambling with our pension funds. Let's end speculative trading on stock markets, hedge funds, cryptocurrencies and foreign exchange. Let's establish a not-for-profit, democratically controlled global system of accounting to equalize the value of labour worldwide. The entire financial system should be converted into a not-for-profit network of socially owned organisations providing essential services. Existing trading platforms and communications networks could become part of a democratically accountable global system of distribution and exchange. The issue of money needed for exchange and credit for investment could become subject to democratic control. We could ask local assemblies to decide which personal debts can be cancelled and which renegotiated. Outstanding mortgages, for example, could be replaced by socially determined, affordable payments. Having brought on a planetary emergency, capitalism is engulfed in a crisis of its own making. It's a clear and present danger to us all, well past its use-by date and overdue for the compost bin. Let's compost capitalism. The future is in your hands.